Strap on your tinfoil hats, because today we're diving into the realm of speculation and talking about what I think the one thing that 6th edition needs to get right is. Greetings gamers, I'm Anto, and my buddy Claire from No Fun Allowed asked me what I want to see the most from 6th edition.
Anto, what do you want to see most from 6th edition?
So that's what we're talking about today. The one thing I want to see the most from 6th edition, the one thing that I think 6th edition needs to get right, is it needs to cater significantly more to new Dungeon Masters. Now I know that 5th edition has the most new players of any edition, and in a lot of ways it's the easiest edition to get into as a player, but I would strongly argue that 5th edition falls short in a lot of ways when it comes to onboarding new Dungeon Masters. Now, I suspect that when 5th edition was released, Wizards of the Coast thought the majority of Dungeon Masters were going to be veterans who learned the new edition and then taught their groups, and that new Dungeon Masters would evolve from those experienced players. I don't think they ever anticipated the massive success and growth of the game, or expected so many brand new people to find their way into the hobby, which sort of explains their hands-off approach to advice for running the game in the core 3 books. But something I've noticed as more and more products have been released is that the default in 5th edition seems to be kind of a DM fiat. In most situations, the rules present, they just say, well, you're the DM, you decide, you figure it out. Now this is great for more experienced DMs, but I think it makes it really difficult for brand new Dungeon Masters, especially those who weren't players beforehand, to know where they stand. Now a great example of this is wealth. The 5th edition DMG gives no indication on how much gold your players should be earning per encounter. Instead it tells you to make it up or roll on the treasure hoard tables, which can vary really quite wildly in the rewards that they give you. Now on the one hand, having the DMG say, give however much gold you want, you're free to choose, is great for experienced DMs, and to be honest, 5th edition doesn't really give you that many ways to spend gold anyway, but again, for a brand new DM, it can be really frustrating. In fact, when I started learning 5th edition, I spent a long time flipping back and forth looking for that wealth table because I assumed I must have missed it. Now, let's stay on the topic of the DMG for a minute here, because I want to tell you about one of the best examples of a really well done DMG in my opinion, and that's the 4th edition one. 4E gets a lot of flack, and most of it I actually don't think it deserves, and I actually plan on making a whole video dedicated to what I love about 4th edition and how you can use it to improve your 5e game in the future, but the opening 30 pages or so of this book blow the 5th edition DMG out of the water when it comes to onboarding new DMs. The 5th edition DMG spends a total of 3 pages devoted to being a Dungeon Master in the broader sense. Now, I'm not talking about how to build worlds or run the game mechanically here, I'm talking more about what your role is as the Dungeon Master. All of that's covered in only 3 pages, and almost half of that is dedicated to a summary of the upcoming section. But the 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, by contrast, spends the first 30 pages of the book talking about what it means to be a Dungeon Master, how you are going to assume that role, and it covers fundamental parts of the role such as how to focus your prep time, how to handle pacing and narration, and how to deal with different problems that are going to come up in your sessions. In fact, one of my favourite parts of the 4th edition DMG is how it breaks down different player types, and then gives you information on how to engage them, and what problems you're likely to come up with against different player types. Now, the way the 5th edition DMG is written, it very much comes across like the designers are speaking to experienced Dungeon Masters, and there's a sprinkling of smaller paragraphs for brand new DMs to use to figure out what their place in the world is. But the 4th edition DMG spends pages and pages breaking down all of those things that a new DM needs to know that aren't just the mechanics of the game. This problem for me was really highlighted in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. We were promised group patron rules, but what we actually got was just pointed to a list on how to run a business in the 5th edition DMG. In that situation, an experienced DM is going to be able to kind of extrapolate from the examples of group patrons in the book and put something together. But a brand new DM is going to be lost, forced to either homebrew a system without years of experience, use the really lackluster official rules, or just ignore that element of gameplay completely. D&D is growing massively popular, and more brand new people are getting into the game. And while 5th edition makes it really easy for a player who wants to run a player character to get into the game, there is a big gap for those brand new Dungeon Masters that isn't being filled. And I think if 6th edition wants to have the best chance of growing in the same way that 5th edition has, Wizards really need to put something in place for those brand new DMs. Sure, there are plenty of resources out there like this channel that are dedicated to helping new Dungeon Masters, but it shouldn't be assumed that your customers have to go somewhere else to figure out how to play your game. This video is part of a series of questions myself and other RPG tubers are asking each other, and I have a question for my buddy Nick Pearson. Nick, what's your #1 tip for a brand new Dungeon Master? You can see Nick's answer right over here, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know down below in the comments, and I'd really like to know what you think the one thing 6th edition needs to do whenever it eventually comes down there too. But until next time, happy gaming.